Hello everyone, and welcome back to Ways of the World, a brief global history with sources. We're going to start our study of the worlds of Christendom, contraction, expansion, and division with Christian contraction in Asia and Africa. All right, let's look at this image of Charlemagne. This 14th century manuscript painting depicts Charlemagne, king of the Franks, being crowned emperor by Pope Leo III, surrounded by other churchmen. His coronation in 800 CE illustrates the close and sometimes conflicted relationship of political and religious authorities in an emerging European civilization. His crowning also represents the futile desire of many in Western Europe to revive the old Roman Empire, even as a substantially new civilization was taking shape in the aftermath of the Roman collapse several centuries earlier. So to what extent is this depiction of a secular ruler, Charlemagne, receiving legitimacy through religion, similar to how other rulers in world history received legitimacy? Well, Chinese rulers were legitimized by holding the mandate of heaven. Meanwhile, Egyptian pharaohs, Incan rulers, and later Roman emperors claimed to be gods or descendants of gods. Byzantine rulers were seen as God's representatives on earth. What made Europe unique, however, was the distinct divide between the person of the ruler and the person of the religious authority. Thus, only in Europe were political rulers crowned, as shown here, by God's representative on earth, as the example of the Pope. All right, Asian Christianity. Within a century or so of Muhammad's death, Christianity almost disappeared from Arabia. Islamic forces seized Jerusalem and its holy sites. In Syria and Persia, many Christians converted voluntarily. Their experiences of individual communities, however, varied. Nestorian Christians, or the Church of the East, survived but shrank in size in Syria, Iraq, and Persia. And Nestorians had some success in Tang China before ultimately withering away. The Dome of the Rock. So to Muslims, the Dome of the Rock was constructed on the site from which Muhammad ascended into the presence of Allah during his night journey. And it was the first large-scale building in the Islamic world and drew heavily on Roman, Byzantine, and Persian precedents. Its location in Jerusalem marked the arrival of a competing faith to Jews and Christians who had long considered the city sacred. So to what extent is the Islamic architectural style seen in this image similar to the architectural style in, for example, St. Mark's Basilica, which you should be able to find in your textbook? And you'll note that both are domed. They employ gilded architecture and use similar arches. All right, Nestorian Christianity in China. This wall painting from Western China, dating to the 7th or 8th century CE, shows Nestorian priests in a procession on Palm Sunday. It provides visual evidence of a meaningful Christian presence in Tang Dynasty China. So what does this image of a Christian sect in China demonstrate about the spread of Christianity through Eurasia? This image tells us that Christianity and Christian ritual reached China by the 7th century CE, and that the basic tenets of this Palm Sunday ceremony, with parishioners carrying palms and the pastor with the cup at front, largely mirrored Christian ritual to the West. The dress of the people are shown here, however, tells us that certain forms were modified for Chinese culture. All right, African Christianity. Coastal North African Christians largely converted to Islam. In Egypt, it was the Coptic Church that survived. They were tolerated by Muslim rulers and tolerated until the Crusades and the Mongol threat when pressed. And the most rural Coptic Christians converted, and some survived in urban areas and remote monasteries. Christianity took place in the 5th and 6th centuries in the Kingdom of Nubia. It thrived for a time, but largely disappeared by 1500 CE. And Ethiopian Christianity, however, is an exception. The rulers of Axum adopted Christianity in the 4th century. Geography protected Axum from the surrounding Muslim world, and so they developed distinctive traditions because of that isolation. All right, the Church of St. George in Ethiopia. This was excavated from solid rock in the 12th century. The churches here were distinctive Christian structures, invisible from a distance and apparent only when looking down on them from ground level. Local legend has it that their construction was aided by angels, and this one, in the shape of a cross, is named for St. George, the patron saint of Ethiopia. So using this image as evidence, think about the extent to which architecture has been used in world history to reflect religious values. This church, like many such buildings in the era, is designed in the form of a cross, designed to remind parishioners of Jesus' sacrifice on the crucifix. This building, moreover, reflects the broader Ethiopian Christian fascination with Judaism in Jerusalem, with churches built underground in order to create a new Jerusalem on Ethiopian soil. And that concludes our study of Christian contraction in Asia and Africa. I will see you guys for Byzantine Christendom, building on the Roman past.